amazing word. Amen. James chapter 3. We're going to start by just kind of busting through James, and then at the end I want to share some ideas with you and see if you guys are on board with some new things. Because I love you guys, and I think that the people that come to the group on Wednesday nights, I value you, and I value your input and your commitment. So anybody willing to start us off by reading the first two chapters, the first two verses, hold on, the first two verses in James chapter 3. Just two verses. Todd, kick us off with two verses. Everybody listen up.
Let not many of you become teachers, my brethren, knowing that as such we shall incur a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well.
Anybody perfect in here? Anybody able to handle that? Yeah. So this is kind of a terrifying passage for a teacher of the word like me. But I had some wise people in my life who told me, they said, hey, by the way, if you feel called to ministry, run away. Run away. Don't even like try to do everything in your power to not do it. And it's like, I didn't understand it then very well, but I think I get it now, right? So they said try not to, and if you come back again and again and you just have to do it, then God's in this thing, but don't just jump into it. It says not many of you should be teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment, because automatically I'm putting myself under fire up here, and by opening my mouth and very possibly saying something that I wish I wouldn't have. Anybody ever said anything you wish you didn't say? Couldn't take it back, could you? It does happen, yeah. On average, men, if anybody ever asked a woman if she's pregnant and she wasn't? Oh no. So, okay, yeah. Ladies, this may happen to you too. Maybe not as traumatizing, but on average, a man makes that mistake once in his life. On average. Some of you may be above average, but that just doesn't, you say it and you want to crawl inside of yourself. And we have other things that we say that we just wish we could go back and take back, but we can't. There was a lady, this is a story about the power of words. It was the town gossip, and maybe you've heard the story before. The town gossip, and she just laid it out for everybody, and she just kept going and going, and she was saying really hurtful things. She must have been a hairdresser, right? No, I don't know what she did, but notoriously we learn a lot about the town from our hairdressers, right? And so she was the town gossip. Don't know what she did, but at one point in time, she kind of had to confront the reality that she was like, man, I really need to repent of this and try to find some forgiveness. She's realizing that she's ruining a lot of people's lives. Whether it was true or not, words can hurt, right? And so she actually approached a priest and asked, well, what can I do to, if there's anything I can do to receive forgiveness for this, let me know. I'd like to do it. I want some penance, And so the priest said, well, you've done a lot of damage in the community, but I need you to go pluck and find a bag full of chicken feathers, and I need you to bring it back. And so she's like, okay, that's kind of strange. So she did it. She brought back a bag of chicken feathers, and she brought it to the priest and said, okay, is that it? And he said, no, there's more to it than that, obviously. So she said, well, what's my next mission? What do I need to do? He said, I need you to go take those chicken feathers, now that you have collected them, which I know was probably a struggle. But you need to take that bag out, and it's a windy day today. I need you to throw the chicken feathers in the wind and watch them fly all over the place, right? And so she did. She went and checked out, and she did what she was supposed to do, and she brought back the empty bag and said, okay, am I forgiven for all of my gossip? And the priest said, I only have one more mission left for you. I need you to go out and collect all of the chicken feathers that you just threw into the wind. She said, I can't do that. They're gone. And the moral of the story is, once it flies out of your mouth, you can't go back and grasp all those chicken feathers again, can you? And so The idea that words are powerful is key here. All right, so, don't become too excited about stepping up and teaching. James 3:3-6. Who wants to read the next 3 verses for me? Somebody new? Next 3 verses, James chapter 3, verses 3-6. Okay, Suzanne, you got this. Nice and loud for everybody.
3. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of a pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire.
And 6.
And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell.
So James is pretty strong about the power of the tongue here. I wrote down never underestimate bits, rudders, and sparks. Anybody experience riding a horse before? Anybody ridden horses? Somebody know? I know I've told a pretty funny story about my experience riding a horse. If you look back on my sermon on gentleness, I talk about my terrifying experience riding the white stallion among the natives of South Dakota Indian Reservation. And I had no idea what I was doing. But the idea of a bit is that a small child would have the power to steer and guide a horse, even though the horse was much larger. In the same way our tongues have the power to guide our lives, right? A giant boat. But the cool thing is about in the ancient days, the largest things that these people ever saw were the biggest things they could build were sometimes boats that would be on the water. And so these things to them were big. Right? They were very big and floating. And some of the biggest things that they could build were controlled by a little flap in the water that would change the direction of the boat, just like our tongue. And so James is laying out stuff here that's just like, it's super easy to understand. My goodness, what's going on? And then he says, of course, a spark is a powerful analogy as well, because a spark can light a forest on fire. And so a spark is powerful in the presence of gasoline, right? And so a spark, your tongue, is powerful in the presence of the world, right? And so powerful stuff. One of the cool things that I realized is that a horse who is tame, a tame horse, is no less powerful than a wild horse. And that's an interesting idea for me because, in fact, a tamed horse, it doesn't mean it's less powerful. It just means it's under the direction of its master, right? And so, to me, I feel like sometimes I have to give up my power or my authority when I have to hold my tongue because I want to say something. I want to beat somebody in an argument. I want to lay down the law. I want to, let my tongue free. And to me, sometimes it feels like when I bite it and I swallow it, sometimes it feels like I give up my power because I'm giving up, because I know I could just, trample all over somebody with my tongue. And when you swallow that, sometimes it's real hard to swallow what you really want to say. But sometimes I swallow it and I think, man, being tamed stinks because there's more power if I just am a wild horse. But that's not really true. If you have the right master, a tame horse can be way more effective and powerful than one who is just wild and has no master on it, right? And so the master actually does the guiding, and the horse is still powerful, maybe more powerful, because the master can train the horse. It can have the horse run through certain training exercises and all that kind of stuff. It is not less powerful to have your tongue tamed. You are not less influential if sometimes you just have to stop, right? Isn't that true? And sometimes it feels like that. But it's just interesting. A horse is not less powerful that way than that. All right, next section, James 3, 7-12. Somebody else. James 3, 7-12. Hey, Eric.
Hey.
Welcome to the party. James 3, 7-12. Somebody looking at it? Ready to bust it out? Feeling it? Feeling it? Feeling it? Feeling it? Anybody? Yeah, Cindy, all right.
For every kind of beast and of birds and of serpents and of things in the sea is tamed and has been tamed of mankind. but the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. Therefore, bless we God, even the Father, and therewith with curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceeds blessings and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be. Does a fountain send forth of the same place sweet water and bitter water? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh water.
Okay, James, thanks. With the tongue we bless God our Father, and with it we curse men. With the same tongue. Not only men, but men who have been made in the similitude of God, or the image of God. God's creation. Who was made in the image of God? Well, who wasn't? That's an easier question to answer, right? Because you can't point to anybody and say, well, I don't know if God made them. It's like, and so out of the same mouth, we praise God and we curse God's creation. I know none of you have ever cursed or been angry at and let your tongue loose on another human. Right? I know none of you have ever, behind their back, said things about those people. Right? I know that you've never done anything like that. So we can just move on, right? Okay, thanks, James. He says, out of the same mouth proceeds blessing and cursing. My brothers, this ought not be so. And then he says something, does a spring send forth fresh water and bitter water? Or my other says salt water from the same spring? Of course not. So I have clear spring water and salt water. Very salty salt water. Has anybody ever gargled with salt water? You put it in your mouth and it's like, woo! Hello! Right? So would any of you be willing to drink the clear water? Okay, you don't have to. I just need to know if you'd be willing to. Of course you would. Sure. Okay, now that you know it's salt water, would you really want to put some of this in your mouth? Yeah. You would, see? Because you're brave, right? You know what this tastes like. And so the idea that James is saying is, one day you say things that represent clear water, praising God. And another day, out of the same mouth, you say things that curse God. And so, what does that make what you say? It's salty, that's right. And so you say praises out of the same mouth that you curse men. Well, what does that make? Your words. Salt water. Yeah. He's saying it doesn't go one way and then the other and then another way. That's back and forth. Put them together, and this is your mouth. This is what you get. And so I think that he's saying that your cursing, in many ways, can negate your praises and the good things that you say. And so James is saying this shouldn't be that way. Yeah, it's still salt water. And so the question is, what do you get when you mix fresh water and salt water? Salt water. Right? You don't get fresh and salt water. It just becomes salt water. And so we got to be very careful about the things that come out of our mouth, because it's the same mouth that blesses God that we curse our brothers, which makes all of it salt water. New perspective on the tongue. Next, James chapter 3, 13 to 18. Somebody else. 13 to 18. We're moving into a different little section here. Fancy Bible people would say a new pericope. New pericope. Talking about wisdom, verses 13 to 18. Okay, go ahead, Rob.
If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness.
And so let's take on wisdom. This is where God started ringing me out a little bit with this idea. We take something for granted because he's writing this to the Jewish community. He's not writing this to the Western culture we live in today, right? He has no idea. James has no idea what it's going to be like in 2019 and 2020. Like, it would probably blow his mind to understand and see the things that we have. How was culture different back then? Well, one of the major things was that it was that culture has slowly been shifting further and further and further to I matter more than anything else, right? This individualistic thing, this consumer, it's all about me, filling me, what I can do to make myself better. This whole idea of community has shifted drastically from when James was writing. And so we actually take this, our culture for granted, and we need to begin to realize that in James's day, they needed each other to actually survive. Like they lived, their family dynamics were so different than ours. We meet our family a couple times a year for holidays. They would just continue to add rooms onto their houses so that their family could all live together, right? And so, and then they would farm together, and they would make life together, and their world was all in this community. Their community was their world. They didn't hop on a plane and look down and see how big the world was and travel to different places. Very few people did that. We have our Paul and Barnabas and some of our apostles that traveled around, but for the most part, they lived in their world. Jesus lived in a 100-mile spot and never left that area. And so it's like Jesus never left Indiana. And for the most part, lived in Pendleton, right? And so his community was his world. And that's how their culture was. And we have a hard time shifting our perspective from global because we understand all the different people groups and all the different areas, and the population's massive. But if your whole world was wrapped up in a quarter of Indiana and you never left it, you didn't even have, who does that? Who leaves, their hometown and their family? Well, the prodigal son did it. He didn't get treated very well by his brothers for it, right? It just wasn't a thing. It was, you were supposed to stay and build a family, and your community was your whole world. And so we take that idea out of Scripture because it's just not natural for us. And so we need to put that back in, this idea of community, that this community is their world. And he says there's two kinds of wisdom. If you've got your guide, there's false wisdom, and then there's true wisdom. He says that in verse what Robert just read, in one of those verses. Who's wise? Okay. If you have bitter envy in your heart, self-seeking, they do not buy and boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above. This is earthly. Mine says sensual, demonic wisdom. Yeah. The selfish, self-centered, everything revolves around me. Remember the Barbara Jean quote from Sunday? Everything revolves around me kind of idea. Selfishness, self-seeking wisdom, that is demonic wisdom. It's false wisdom. It's not wisdom from above. It's wisdom from below. So there's this false, worldly, natural wisdom, and it thrives where? In solitude. I get to be right. I get to win the argument. I get to be the one who tells everybody else what to do. I'm the one in control. I am on top. And have you ever heard anybody say it's lonely on top? You climb and climb and climb until you get to the top, and It's lonely up there, right? If you use worldly wisdom to climb the ladder of success, you'll find yourself on the top and all alone. And you can thrive with worldly wisdom in solitude. You can be the top, 0.1% of the world's income could be all you. You've succeeded, right? With worldly wisdom. But it's lonely. And false worldly wisdom thrives in solitude, self-seeking in your hearts. For where there is self-seeking, for where envy and self-seeking exists. Because when you're self-seeking, you never have enough. And my goodness, we are in a culture that thrives on never having enough. Like everything that we want and buy that ads try to pull us into is because I need more. I need more and more and more. We consume so much. Where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there. Man, he's talking pretty bad about this worldly wisdom. And this worldly wisdom, we realize, leads to competition. We're fighting each other for the top spot. I'm going to win the argument. I need to have the win. I am going to climb, and if I'm going to be on top, that means you have to be on bottom. Because if someone's on top, that means someone else has to be on the bottom, right? And so it leads to competition. But then he says true wisdom, that's from above, is first pure, peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, Sorry, I know how hard that is. Willing to yield. Willing to yield. Full of mercy and good fruits. Without partiality. Without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. And so true heavenly or supernatural wisdom, it doesn't thrive in solitude. That kind of wisdom thrives in this messy, screwed up thing we call relationships. Relationships are hard. It's easier to just try to beat the other person out and then go off and be on your own. I won the argument, see you later. Relationships require us to sometimes yield. Relationships. Community. And that kind of wisdom thrives in relationships, and it leads to cooperation, working together. The body of Christ made up of very many different parts. You think about the church all around the globe. So many different kinds of churches, filled with so many different kinds of people, filled with so many kinds of different people who love Jesus and express it with different gifts in so many different ways. That's beautiful. That's relationship, and that is messy. We have so many in church fighting and divisions, and so much happens because we're not often willing to yield. And so what good is wisdom outside of relationship? Is a major question that I'm beginning to ask. What good is it to have the right answers when you don't have right relationships? Right? What good is having the right answer when you, as Andy Stanley would say, you can write your spouse right out the door. You can write your kids right out of your life. You can write people, you can write your friends, R-I-G-H-T. You can write them right away. Write them right out of your life. What good is wisdom outside of relationship? What good is being right when you don't have right relationships? And if Jesus came to be right, it would have taken him like 30 minutes. Just lay it all out there, be done, and he did it. But Jesus did more than just be right. He came to make right. He came to make right relationships, and that got him killed. And so how about you and I? Are we willing to not just be right, but to make right? And yield sometimes, and listen. Like we talked about on Sunday with Sherilyn here with Dove Harbor, to be able to sit down and listen to people and hear stories and not just write people off because they're different or have different backgrounds than us. And that leads me to what God's been kind of ringing me out on, and that is, who can tell me what the greatest commandment is? The Bible. You guys are, I know you know it, right? You love the Lord your God, with your heart, soul, and strength. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself, right? Love God, love your neighbor. So here's what hurts a little bit. I am short. I am short. I am short. I could walk around all day and say I'm short. At the end of the day, what's true? Right. I guess unless you set me up to somebody who's really, really, really tall. But you get the idea. I could say it all day long. That doesn't make it true. I love our neighbors. I love our neighbors. Our church, we love our neighbors. We love our neighbors. Pendleton Community Church of God. We love our neighbors. Turn over your page and look at the back side of that where I've got the blue. Oh, did you get one, Eric?
I did not.
Got the extra one back there for you. Here you go. This is, you can see where this is? See where our church is? Pinpoint our church, everybody. This is a map of our area here. We love our neighbors. We love our neighbors. And so God had me go on a walk today. And I walked around. I didn't have this map drawn or anything like that yet. I just went out and walked around because I knew I needed to. And I walked over by Alicia's house, and I walked over there by Horizon. And I came back and did something else, and then I told Sally, hey, if you need me, text me, I'll be outside. And at that point in time, I walked over around what we used to call the Jesus Mall, right, where all those businesses are. And I walked around the neighborhood, and I said, do I love my neighbors?
Whoever they are.
Exactly. We love our neighbors here at this church, right? We got that down. Well, then it started asking the question like, I love God. Oh, no. Right? And that's what James is trying to get at this whole time. He's saying, show me your faith by what you're doing, right? And so I could say all day that I love my neighbors, but do I? Do? Emphasis on the do, right? Really cool. Today I spent a little more time outside. At the end of the day, I was getting ready to leave. Before you guys go, our neighbor over here, her name is Sue, and her husband was a big part of helping build Fall Creek Christian Church back when it got started the first time. Anyway, I've talked to her quite a few times about that. Happened by chance, she stopped by and we talked for a half hour in the parking lot, and she reached over, and as she's done before, she handed me a loaf of friendship bread. How cool is that on the day that I knew that we need to start talking about loving our neighbors? And so before you leave, you got to come check out some of Sue's friendship bread. I cut it up and I got it in bowls, and you can have some of that. Do I love my neighbors? If I were to answer that honestly, for the most part, I would say no.
I think it mostly comes down to we tolerate our neighbors.
We do tolerate our neighbors, yes, exactly. And that's different, isn't it? Do I say, would I love my neighbor if they walked in the door? Well, sure I would. Come on in, right? But that's different. And this is, I knew that it wasn't a shaming thing for me to share that with all of you. What actually was more of a burden for our community. And here's the problem. It's not a problem. I knew that 2019 was homecoming year, right? 60 years, this is homecoming. Like, this is the year of homecoming. We need to reach out and start bringing some people back home again, because we need to love on the people that need to be here, that have been here in the past, that haven't been here in a while. Homecoming, people that have maybe I've never even met because they were here before I even got here, you know. Homecoming, come back home and celebrate life with us. Hopefully not just for the celebration, but for a weekly thing, like get engaged with this faith community that we have. And we want to love on you. Homecoming, homecoming, homecoming. I already knew that the Lord was leading us to move into 2020 being a year of neighbor. And so I had kind of started thinking about it and praying about it, because I wanted to, at our 60-year celebration, I wanted to be able to tell everybody, like, hey, our church, we are celebrating the past today, but moving forward, we are really excited about this new vision that God's given us to love our neighbors and fulfill the commission that God's had. Our actual neighbors, right? Our actual neighbors that live around us. And today, as I was just kind of preparing, I don't know if God talks to you in weird ways sometimes, but to me today, he basically said, if I'd have wrote it down, I didn't hear an audible voice or anything, but it's one of those things where I knew that God was saying this. He said, don't wait until 2020 to love your neighbor, dummy. Don't wait until 2020. You know, you've got this great vision, a great plan. Don't wait until then to start loving your neighbor. And so tonight, with this idea that what good is taming your tongue if you never have the opportunity to even speak words of life into our neighbors and use it, right? What good is wisdom if we're alone? What good is being right if we don't have right relationships? And so, my goodness, I just want to start the conversation with you guys. And I'm not going to wait until I have it all polished up and have an idea. So what I did was on the back of there, you can see that is very zoomed in. If we say we serve Madison County, that's very zoomed in. And so what you see on there is Section 1 is kind of our Hayden Way and this side of the Water Street folks. And so Section 1, we've got 47 houses. 47 houses right here in walking distance on this side. 47 houses. How many of those people do you know their names and families? I know Sue. I know Tom. I know our other neighbors that I forget their name right now. Randy. And she works over at Anita's. Yeah, and they go to Markville. I know them a little bit.
Lori's dad lives in
yeah, Lori's dad lives over here. I've never seen him at his house, but he lives right down the road. Anyway, 47 houses. Okay, and we've got all these different businesses. So think about every house probably has more than, not every house, but the majority probably have more than one person living in it. If we have an average, it's probably not one. Average is probably more than one. How many people are represented there? I don't know. How many people are represented in these businesses that are right here? We got a lot right around us. The employees of the businesses, the patrons of the businesses. And that's just in this Section 1 here. If we move over to where industry exploded, you know, we've got 41 houses. Most of those are back there by Alicia in that little addition. And then there's one random one that's offshooted over here by Horizon. But 41 houses. A lot of those are young families. I've not met a single person from over there. The first time I've ever walked over there was today. And it took me like a minute to get over there. I mean, it's right there. Right down by the library. How many people are represented there? How many people are represented by our library who come and work at the library and who visit the library? Brown Pool, the parks back there. My goodness, Rollins House. How many families? I know that in our history we've had connections with Rollins House where we actually went over there and did Bible studies and met with people. And Buck got standing ovations walking through there because he was royalty walking over there at one point in time. Like, it's Buck! But we did that, you know. And I can't say that I have and that we have in a while. But families represented who probably need a lot of hope and love right across the street. All the businesses over there, my goodness. There is another church over there. It's called the True Apostolic Church.
Oh, apostolic.
Mm-hmm. And so in Section 1, there's one church. That's us. In Section 2, there's one church. That's the Apostolic Church. And there's all those businesses. Horizon is in that section right over there. And we love our connection with them. But again, haven't been there much. We were blessed to have our leadership team meeting there a couple times back in their little area. Beautiful facility and a great connection. And then we have all these other things that are here. Believe it or not, the Pendleton YMCA actually falls under that grid right there. It's back in the corner, but it still made it. Brown Pool, of course, that new apartment building, that counts. Is there 6 in there, I think? 6 apartments in that new building?
6 or 8.
6 or 8. And so I didn't count. I counted that as one apartment building. Quite a few represented there. So the question is, here I almost did this. If I had more time, I was going to do a fill in the blank and see how many of these establishments you could recognize. And guess how many houses were in here. But I didn't do that. I just listed them all out for you. But then I kept asking myself, do I love my neighbor? Does our church, if I were to walk around and ask, hey, what do you think about Pendleton Church of God? Would they say, oh, right down the corner, yeah, you guys are like a beacon of light to the community? You know? Well, we say we love you, but you don't even know us. So anyway, I'm just starting the conversation because I know that if there's any church I've ever been to and been a part of, this is a church that can love neighbors. Like, this is the one. We've done it so well with the random people that walk through those doors with a random, like with the brokenness that we engage with people that that could be easily written off in a faith community, we have done a fantastic job of loving those people into this place. And so there is nothing stopping us from loving our 88 houses and however many businesses and all the employees. And my goodness, what I was brokenhearted. Here's what I was doing as I was walking around. I was apologizing to God for being too busy to get out there and talk to my neighbors. I was really busy with the Lord's work in my office, right? Reading. And so I was brokenhearted. But at the same time, I was like super excited because it is going to be a big deal for us as a church to begin building relationships with our neighbors. What good is the wisdom we have if we don't have right relationships with our neighbor? What good is our wisdom if we're not even doing the thing we say we do, loving God and loving our neighbors? And then I started to think about 1602 Greenway Drive. That's my location. What about my neighbors? Well, we're just now starting to build relationships with a couple of our neighbors, and it's been awesome. But there are many that I haven't met. There's a new young family right across the street from us that I waved to. But how about your addresses, where you live, and the neighbors around you, you know? Do they know you? Do you know them? Here's another thing that was breaking my heart. When I was looking at this map, how many of these people are battling cancer and don't have anybody to tell? How many of these people don't have a faith community at all, and they're lonely, and they need someone to knock on their door and say, hey, just want to let you know we're here, and we'd love to have you come be a part of what we got going on. How many of these people are struggling to make ends meet? Just because they live in Pendleton doesn't mean they're rich, right? How many are struggling? The struggle is not the problem. The problem is that I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue. And I'm the pastor of this church, and this is all in walking distance. Like really close walking distance. Like very close. And so it is an amazing challenge that I want to set for myself and then for us as a group too. I don't know what it is the Lord has us to actually do, except for to wrestle with this idea. And I had no plans of this being what came out of James chapter 3, right? But this idea that wisdom is no good in solitude, or as Robert said earlier, I can't do what we can, or something like that, you know? We can do what I cannot. This, my goodness, guys, I love what this faith community has to offer. And if we go around and make ourselves known in the community, we may find 1, 2 families that find a home, that find hope in Jesus Christ. But we're not going to find them by just waiting, right? And so I don't know what all this means, but I do know that our study in James chapter 3 took a turn when I started thinking about being in right relationship with our neighbors and following the Great Commandment. We're not going to wait until 2020 to love our neighbors, but I will tell you in 2020 it's going to be like full force. It's going to be full force. Think about this. If you were to look at this map, if you go to Google Maps and do this yourself, and you zoom out a little bit, there's a giant high school right there. You can see it when we walk out. There are elementary schools. There are housing additions. There are mobile home additions. There are houses like crazy all around us. If you zoom out a little bit, there's going to be a section 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and we'll still be within walking distance, right? Well, it depends on who's walking, I guess, right? Yeah. I'm just saying, and yeah, if you zoom out a little bit more, there's a prison down the road. That's all a lot to handle for me, right? So I zoomed in. I gave us 1 and 2 to just start praying about. I even handed one of these to our neighbor, Sue. And I said, hey, I know that you are a prayer warrior too. Would you start praying for our neighbors? And she said, well, sure. And I'll hand one to Linda too. She's a great prayer warrior. Linda's the piano and vocal teacher for Bailey and Quinn and a lot of other people in the community. And so she's going to start praying for our neighbors. And just being over there, I got some friendship bread that we can all share as a result of just being around. So anyway, what a great, awesome burden challenge for us to start. I don't even want to necessarily do a big brainstorming session because there's a billion things we could do. Right? There's a billion things we could try. We could say a lot of things. I just needed you to know that this is where we're headed. And if you are willing to pray about it And if you're willing to fast with me about this, I don't need to know you're fasting. That defeats the point anyways. But if you're willing to pray and fast over, man, how does our church, what's our role in loving our neighbors? You know? And I guarantee you in 2020, after we start rolling this, I'm going to start getting really uncomfortable with you and start asking you about your address. Right? And think about the amount of change that we can make in this world if not only we did our little walking area, but if you saw a map of where everybody from our church is located, where they live, and then we just did a little circle around everybody, we would be making a pretty big impact on landmass, right? There's a lot of people, you got a lot of neighbors, a lot to offer. I know you love this church, right? I know that you love what this place has to offer, and boy, I'm excited about the old school term would be evangelism, right? It's just sharing our faith and being present in our community. So right off the bat, any feedback on James 3 or this weird loving neighbor map that I threw at you? Any thoughts, encouragements, memories of times that a lot of folks, you've been Christian for a while, there was a time in your life when the fire was roaring and you did stuff like this. And so maybe a fun story of times that you've done something like this, but it's been a while. Go ahead, Eric.
Very humbling experience, but not for the reason you might think. If those of you know where I live over between Mechanicsburg and Middletown, and I decided that I was going to invite every single person on the north side of 36 from here to my house. Every house on the north side of 36, I was going to go to their door and invite them to church. And at one point, I was holding the door shut. There was a big chow dog trying to come out and eat me alive, and the door didn't have a latch on it, and I just had to stand there and hold the door shut. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was going to get out of there. And they were hiding from me inside, and they finally came out and held the door shut. But anyway, so I did it. I don't know how many it was. I didn't keep track. There's a lot of houses between here and my house. And there was one guy. There were some people that were really rude. Mostly they were really nice. There was one guy that came out of a really, really, really run-down trailer in Mechanicsburg, and he had really, really, really bad teeth. And he had long red hair that did not look like, it wasn't like a style. It was like it had not had any attention in a long, long time. It was long not because of a statement, it was long because of lack of barber. And I would guess he went about 175, and his bibs would have fit me pretty easily. I saw all of him down in those giant bibs. And so after I invited all those people on a Sunday, that next Sunday morning, I sat out there and waited for my people to show up. And at first I was pretty optimistic that maybe some of those people were going to show up. And finally, as we got closer and closer to time for the service to start, I thought to myself, you know the way my life runs, probably the only person who'll show up that got the rotten teeth. And by the time it was over, no one showed up. My heart was broken. I didn't give anything for that guy with that bad teeth to show up. And it was a very humbling experience because it showed me that while my heart was sort of in the right place, it sort of wasn't. Right. And so I was on fire for God, and I wanted people to know about God. But at the same time, my motives weren't maybe pure. Right. And so I've always thought about that a lot. And so I've always been, I'm for any kind of some crazy stuff like that. It doesn't bother me to do it or to not do it. And but I think about when it comes to evangelism, I think about what Dave Ramsey says. Dave Ramsey says you can wander into death, but no one's ever wandered out of death. And I think you can wander into being a very lukewarm, non-witnessing Christian. I don't think it's possible to wander out. I think you have to start out your day intentionally looking for someone to love. And if you don't, I just don't think you're going to do it. And I just do not think you're going to do it. And so my coffee ministry is really just a crutch. That I had a paper that had all of our faces from the entire member of the church, like a mosaic, so you could see everybody that went to the church. And it said, "Come join the family." Well, that was my crutch, because I could go to the door with something in my hand.
Okay.
And so my coffee ministry is just another crutch. And so I just think that whether you go door to door, I don't think, whatever you do, I just think that you have to start out with your heart looking for someone to love that day.
That's right.
And then after Wednesday, then do that again on Thursday.
Whether or not they come to the church.
And whether or not their dog tries to bite you.
Whether or not.
Or whether or not they even answer the door. I think you have to just look for people to love on. I mean, I just have a real heart for it. I can break down a ball just talking about it. But I think that's what's lacking. Is I think we love people all that much, really.
We say we do.
I think we spend an awful lot of time trying to be right. And often trying to be right about stuff that don't even matter.
Right.
Dr. Phil said, "Do you want to be happy or do you want to be right?" And man, I've spent a lot of time trying to be right about things that don't matter. I'm done.
Yeah. So we can write people right out of those doors. Yeah. Well, I can guarantee you the conversation is going to continue. And we're going to mess it up sometimes when we try this thing, because relationships are messy. And I don't know what kind of fruit we're going to see, but I can tell you it's going to be very exciting to come back to the church with stories of the guy in the overalls that were too big, with stories of about getting eaten up by a dog, with stories of the family that we met. It's going to be very exciting. And for some of you, it's frightening to just be out there. I'll tell you, my first step is going to be very simple. You want to hear what it is? I'm just going to start walking. I see the guy that walks around there's people that walk here almost every day. And he's a familiar face to me now. Never met him. But if he were to walk up to me in the parking lot and I'd be like, "Hey, I kind of recognize you." I'm just going to start walking, and we're just going to see where it goes from there. I had some casual conversations with people today. I didn't mention anything about who I was or what I was doing. I was just walking with headphones in and met somebody. I took him out and said, "Hey."
Most of the people have heard this, but I prayed one morning that God give me somebody to witness to.
Yeah.
Alistair Begg he used to preach me all the way up Schuylerfield, and then he would end about 10 minutes before I got to work, 5, 10 minutes. And I said, "Lord, give me somebody to witness to." And when I got to work, most of you heard this, maybe one of you. And when I got to work, there was a guy named Phil waiting on me. Phil came in about twice a year. Phil was a prescription drug addict. He was on disability from General Motors, and he was a prescription drug addict. And he came in about twice a year. He's fanatical about his vehicle. And so he came in twice a year to buy stuff to keep his car nice. That's when I worked with carburetor. And I had prayed right before pulling into that parking lot, "Lord, give me somebody to witness to today." And so when I got there, I was always the first person there. Phil was waiting in the parking lot in a spotless car. And he said, "Hey, buddy, I need a few things." And super loud, man. He made me seem quiet. And I said, "All right." So let me get opened up here and I'll help you. And he said, "All right." And so as I'm trying to open up, turn the lights on, he says, "Armstrong says you're a big Jesus freak now." And I said, "Is that right?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I ain't a good Jesus freak." And he says, "Yeah, that's what he said." I'm still opening up. So I get done and I get everything hooked up. I said, "So what do you need, Phil?" So Phil hands me his list, and I'm going through the warehouse and I'm picking up all the stuff he needs. And he said, "Yep, Armstrong said you're a big God man now, and I better watch what I say." And I'm still getting stuff. I said, "Well, you know," I said, "Armstrong, time loudmouth." I said, "Phil," I said, "I've been going to church for 2 years." I said, "I've never tried to ram God down your throat yet, have I?" And he said, "No." That was it. I was done. And then I'm literally writing up his invoice. I was like, this guy asked for God twice. And I'm so stupid that I didn't see the door. He had to open it up a second time. And so after that, I started praying, and "Lord, make it math. I am not good at this. So you're going to have to really make it obvious." And I mean, it's amazing how often it is obvious. But I mean, I literally had a drug addict ask me a time about Jesus 2 times. firm believer that praying God's will is scary business.
Yeah.
And I believe sharing His love certainly falls into that God's will area.
I think the question I have for all of you is, are you ready and willing to love people? You know, because if we start bringing those people in, there's going to be somebody that may rub you the wrong way, that has completely the opposite views of you on stuff that's really important to you. And are you willing to make right relationship over being right? You know, and then build that. Are you ready to love? Go ahead, Cindy. And I'm going to ask you all to stand up, and I'm going to circle up and pray for our community.
Well, when you said something earlier about the open door, you know, we had it open. And us older people remember when we used to have Bible study in the foyer.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a gentleman from Rollins House who used to go every week to whatever it is over here, to get ice cream. And one Sunday he came in.
Oh, did he?
Yes. And he was George. His name was George. And I'm
George
telling you,
George Shaw, I drove right up to the door.
yeah, he was in a scooter in his wheelchair. And we welcomed him in. And he came to church for a long, long time.
That's cool.
But it was because of an open door on a Bible study night.
Yep.
And, you know, it just, God sometimes brings them in when we didn't even really ask him to come in.
Yeah, that's true. So are we willing to have the open door?
Yes.
And be willing to get out there? Everybody come gather around here. We'll pray. And then I want you all to experience Sue's delicious friendship bread. It's the sweetness of getting to know our neighbors. How's that? But I've got this here. I'll just put this right in the middle. I'm just excited. James chapter 3 should have never taken us this direction, but God does weird things like that. And we're going to have this conversation with our board and our leadership team, and we'll keep talking about it with you guys. But that paper in the middle represents a very small section of our neighbors. And by best estimate, there's at least 500 or more. There's more if we include families at Rollins House and all of that. So let God burden your heart with the possibility of what's going on in some of those households and some of those families. Now, some of them are going to be great church-going families that are on fire for Jesus, and you can just celebrate with them when we get to know them. But there's a lot of struggle. And so let's just, in this moment, begin thanking God for our neighbors and helping us, asking Him to help us know, how do we love our neighbors? Heavenly Father, what a great burden. There are people struggling with cancer. There's people that are just buried in debt. There's so much pressure. There's people with suicidal thoughts. There's families that don't know how to hold it together. There's potential divorces and actual divorces, and kids in turmoil, and adults who are lonely, and there's so much. And here we are, so blessed with so much here to offer at this little church. And Lord, I pray that you would awaken our hearts and light that fire inside of us. I have no idea what it looks like. I believe, Lord, that when we're ready, you will begin to point us and point them towards us. And so, Lord, help us to be ready. And just quicken our feet for the gospel. Lord, thank you for breaking my heart and bringing me out today. And I just pray for those future relationships. I pray for give us the grace to yield when we come across people that just drive us crazy. Because it's more important that they have a right relationship with you. And Lord, we love you so much. And we love these people. We love this community. And we want to do more than just say that we do. We want to prove that we do by our works, by our actions. That's what James has told us in James chapter 3. And so, Lord, we let you take over our tongues. Let our tongues be the horses that you're in control of. We're going to be way more effective and powerful if we let you be in control and you be the master. It blows my mind to think about what you can do if we just surrender to you. And so, Lord, breathe your life into this community, through us, in us, among us, around us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Hoorah. James chapter 3. Never expected that, huh? Get your friendship ready.